everyone, I am here with a hospice story for you. This one is by Annie Reaney, and it is the hospice story of Joni. Mama, Jesus has me by the hand. I have to go now. One could always find a vase full of day-old roses in varying colors and sizes next to Joni's hospital bed. Sam, one of his precious 5-year-olds, most ardent admirers, would bring her roses from a local floral shop on his way to work at the children's hospital. Yes, even at 5 years old, Joni knew very clearly what her likes and dislikes were. In addition to flowers, Joni enjoyed painting, crayons, the Play Lady, and riding her IV pole like a skateboard down the hall of the hospital each night before going to bed. Riding the pole was a distraction meant to help smooth the transition between getting ready for bed and saying goodbye to her mother, a single mom who had to get home to care for her other child. While Pam, Joni's mother, always laminated that she had to choose which daughter to spend time with, she knew she couldn't be in two places at once. So in the early evening, she would leave Joni to us and go home to be with her other child. Joni had leukemia, the type that typically has less chance of survival, especially in those days before the advent of bone marrow transplants, which provide improved chances of recovery. At the time of her diagnosis, most children with this disease spent a good portion of their time receiving treatment in the hospital as opposed to in a clinic as is done today. The hospital quickly became a home away from home, if such a thing were possible, for Joni and children like her. I came to know Joni and her family very well, as I had the privilege of caring for her during my 3 to 11 shift as a pediatric nurse. The beauty of the evening shift on a pediatric ward is that the commotion of the 7 to 3 shift is over. Children are fed dinner, given their medications, and then readied for bed, much like at home. More time could be spent with children at the hospital bedside, sneaking a few precious minutes to read a bedtime story, watch a TV show, or comfort a child whose parents had gone home for the night after a long day at the hospital. Joni, although just 5 years old, amazed me with her humor and spiritual maturity. Whenever her minister would come to visit, which he did often, he would end his visit by asking Joni, "Would you like to pray with me?" Joni readily obliged, closing her eyes and bowing her head in prayer. She would then begin to pray for her family, her friends, everyone except for herself. When finished with her prayer, she would always end their visit with, "Thank you, preacher. See you next time." What matters for a child so young and so sick? As her illness progressed, despite heroic efforts to keep her disease in remission, Joni developed complications. One night she bled into her brain from low blood counts. Her mother rushed to her bedside and lay across her body, begging her not to die. Joni rallied that night and eventually fully recovered from the effects of the bleed, leaving her with miraculous full function of her brain, body, and spirit. She returned to her usual self, charming and cheering other patients, parents, and staff. Unfortunately, this was for a very limited amount of time. Joni's disease returned with a vengeance, and her mother decided that whatever time she had left should be spent at home, her real home, not her hospital home. Joni was kept comfortable and was able to play with her older sister and enjoy being with her family once again. She eventually became less and less responsive as the disease took its toll on her young body, and she spent more time sleeping than she did awake. Her mother struggled with how to give permission to her little girl to die. Staff had spoken to her about a child's ability to stay alive long past the appointed time until they felt it permissible to die and leave their parents and family behind. Joni, it seemed, was very patient. As Joni declined, Pam came to the realization, albeit reluctantly, that Joni was waiting for her to give her permission to let go of her earthly life and to go on to heaven. One evening, before Thanksgiving, Pam was rocking Joni, who had been completely unresponsive for several days. She leaned down and whispered into Joni's ear, "Honey, honey, it's okay now. Your sister and I are going to be all right." When you feel Jesus is ready to take you, you can go. Minutes passed, and Joni remained still. Suddenly, she opened her eyes wide. She looked up at Pam and clearly said, "Mama, he's here." "Jesus has me by the hand. I have to go now." She smiled the smile that everyone came to know as Joni smiled and took her last breath. Through her tears, Pam smiled too. Pam spoke at her daughter's funeral. One can only imagine how difficult this was as a mother preceded in death by a young child. But she wanted very much to share Joni's last words. She wanted all of us to know where Joni had gone and with whom. I have thought about Joni at least once or twice a year for the past 25 years. Her parting words continue to inspire me and those I tell of her journey. I believe it is truly through Joni's experience that I was able to share not only her life, but also her gift of childlike faith and hope. Jesus' words remind us that unless we become as little children, we shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. I look forward to seeing Joni again one day.